Good morning and welcome everybody to the latest podcast brought to you from the Export to Japan team. And today we're going to be diving into the world of selling and doing business development in the technology sector for all you tech companies out there that are looking at the Japanese market. And I'm really pleased to have an expert with us today that we're going to be talking to. It's Wakako Yamaguchi of Business Link Japan. And Wakako has actually spent at least the last 10 years of her life helping international companies from the tech sector break into the Japanese market, and also has some experience beyond that in a previous career where she was working in this sector also. So Wakako, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Wakako Yamaguchi. So Steve already explained about me, so I think I have nothing to tell.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would love...
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, welcome, Wakako, and it's great to have you on board. And it would be great if you could just tell us perhaps a little bit more about some of the things you've been involved in during the last 10 years with Business Link Japan. That would be interesting to know a bit more, please.
Yes, as Steve mentioned, I've been working for Business Link Japan for 10 years now, and my role is to support mainly UK company business expansion in Japan. So I've been working for many sectors client now. From the beginning, I worked for a GPS antenna manufacturer, but recently I worked for an analytic equipment company or very high innovative AI machine learning company too. So I have been working for really widely.
That sounds good. And that latest one, I'm really keen to hear about, because many people think that Japan is the land of technologies like AI, but you're actually working with a UK-based technology company that have some AI technology, and you're helping them do business with Japanese companies right now.
Yes, they are a software as service SaaS company. Their product is predictive maintenance system. So it's a software. So it is quite challenging for them because the Japanese like to use a Japanese company, but lots of people are now aware that company has a very unique technology, and then I've been working on behalf of them to explain what's the benefit and what's the strong point, lots of things, and then lots of people are becoming aware this company has a unique technology and advanced technology to understand. I mean to
see the benefits of what it can do.
Well, so maybe lots of people are aware to get to know more about that company. And then
it sounds so exciting. And I've got to say, I'm really happy to hear stories like that when the UK has these unique technology companies working in these fields that can be successful in going to the Japanese market. So we'll come on to that in a bit more detail, and I'll ask you some more questions about that a little bit later in the discussion. Okay. But first of all, I'd like to keep it a little broader, and I'd like to hear a bit more from your perspective. You know, you're there on the ground in Japan on a day-to-day basis, and you're working in this technology sector, which is quite a wide kind of expression that can cover many different sectors. But the first question I have is, what do you sort of see and hear are the key topics or the hot areas or the buzz expressions that Japanese companies are sort of interested in and working on in the technology sector right now?
Yeah. I think the trend of technology are very similar it's very similar as a globally, because so maybe AI as mentioned, then IoT, robotics, and 5G, and then digital or energy transformation is very key, very trend here too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then I also think the trend is coming from overseas. So as you said, Japan is a kind of technology-based country, but the new technology is coming from overseas, I believe.
Wow, so, that's really interesting to hear, because certainly historically, we always imagined, and certainly I'm talking from the point of view from the international world looking at Japan, Japan previously was always seen as the land of innovation, and a lot of new innovations coming out of Japan. But you're saying that there's a little bit of a different trend now, and what you're seeing is Japan is open to and interested in following innovations that are coming from overseas more now.
Yeah, I think so. The Japanese company has a basic technology, or they have a lot of IPs, a lot of basic technology, but they are aware they have to learn some new technology from overseas. So they are trying to tapping into new technology.
That's great to hear. And I guess what that does mean is that there are opportunities for international companies that have some unique technologies. I guess like the one you referred to a little bit earlier that you're currently working with, it means that those opportunities are there if the Japan side is hungry to learn and take new ideas and concepts on board. So that sounds really exciting, and I'm so glad to hear about that trend. That's great. Okay, well, I want to dive in a little bit more to start to talk about some of the processes of doing business in Japan. And as we said, you've had at least a minimum of 10 years experience, if not more, of doing it. So I'd like to ask a few questions about that right now. And the first thing I want to ask you is this question about Japanese companies having a reputation for taking a long time to make decisions. So there's definitely that perception out there in the international world that it takes a long time to get decisions. What's your view on that, Wakako, and your experience on that, please?
Well, with the need to shorten the time to market, it is getting shorter than before, I believe. But it is still true. Japanese take time. So yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I've sort of picked up and learned is that sometimes the overall period for going from first introducing a new technology through to an implementation, that period can be the same. But the difference is that on the Japan side, the decision-making part tends to be so much longer. But then when they make a decision to go, the implementation side tends to be so much quicker. Whereas in the Western world, and I'm obviously generalizing here, but in the Western world, decisions can often be made much more early up front. And then it's a decision's made on the basis of working out the implementation a little bit later. I mean, is that a fair summary? Do you think that's an accurate description of how it works on the Japan side?
Yeah, so as I said, it takes time. I mean, there's some reason why they take time to make a decision. So before they make a decision to go ahead, they want to make sure the product is okay. And then they want to have the full confidence about the product they want to use. So that's the reason I think they take time to make a decision. But as you said, as long as they feel confidence, 100% sure, I think they can make a quick decision to go ahead after they make a decision. So implementation is quite quicker than, and then smooth.
Yes. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, and I've certainly seen examples of that in cases that I've worked on. Well, if we explore that decision making a little bit more, so another point that I've heard that I want to get your opinion on is this sort of difference between the consensus-based decision making that happens in Japan versus, again, and I'm generalizing, of course, but generally in the Western world, it's more of a, it can often be a one person, somebody at the top that can kind of make a decision, and they make the decision and everybody follows it. But I know it's much more sort of consensus based. And I think there's even an expression for that decision making process in Japan. So again, can you tell us a little bit more? Have you had experience of this sort of consensus based decision making and how that may work in Japanese companies?
Yeah, so maybe you may have heard nemawashi. That's
Right.
the consensus building process or something. So I believe the number of stereotypical Japanese company is decreasing. So the way of thinking is, I think, completely different depending on where you work for and the market. So if the Japanese company only focus to Japanese Japanese market, they tend to do something nemawashi, and then they will take time. But if the company is targeting to overseas market, the nemawashi process take time. So some maybe overseas company, I mean some company who try to get the business to overseas company, they maybe skip some nemawashi process. I think.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And just to really help our listeners that are looking at Japan for the first time, to help them really understand what we mean by this. So this consensus building nemawashi process involves getting lots of people into the meetings, into this discussion. They may be from different departments in the Japanese company. And it's kind of getting the consensus of all those different stakeholders and those different departments, getting them on board with making the decision so that they collectively make the right decision. I mean, is my understanding of that a fair one, would you say?
Yeah, that's true. But I think the point you may have to think about who to talk to. I mean, of course, the Japanese, as you say, there are a lot of people, relevant people, and the divisions are there. So we may have to talk to each division, but maybe we have to find out the key person. I think the frontline people is a key, I think. So once we get a good relationship with that key person, he will or she will do some nemawashi work for us. So,
I see.
so yeah, we have to find the right person. So
Right.
I can't say we don't have a top-down procedure, top-down process or something. There are some, I believe, because as I said, there are new companies coming that are like a venture spirit people has a different mind compared with old style people. So those company might have that kind of top-down system,
Right.
but still we needed to find out the key person.
Yeah, I've got it.
It's a difficult part, but
I bet, I can imagine.
but we
Yeah.
have to do.
Yeah. Okay. So a big part of what you do in your sort of business development role is focusing on getting through, identifying who the key person and persons are, and then getting through to them and building that relationship with them. And then from what you're saying is that can often speed up the process, because if you're engaging that right person, they will do some of this nemawashi stuff in the background to make things work. Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. I mean, would you say with this difference in business culture and the difference in the sort of decision-making process, a couple of the other points I'd like to explore with that. Again, I hear that Japanese companies are quite demanding, certainly by Western standards, in terms of the information that they require. They've got a reputation for being notorious for asking for lots of information, lots of specifications, lots of questions. And again, that can be tiring for the international companies that are trying to do business in Japan. But again, is that something you find, and is that a necessary part of the process that international companies need to be aware of that and need to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's very similar to my previous answers, but the Japanese really want to make sure everything is okay before everything starts. So as you said, it's demanding. They will ask you a lot of questions about the specs and the services, what you can provide, or those things need to be like not needed to be perfect, but they request kind of perfect. So
Yeah.
maybe for the foreign companies might get stressed, I believe. But yeah, it might be.
And I think these are great points to bring out in this discussion, because we hear a lot of foreign companies say that it takes a long time to be successful in Japan and you have to be very patient, and there's no doubt that that's kind of true. But what we're talking about here and what we're exploring is how you can make the process quicker and not lose unnecessary time by being prepared in this way. And if you're mentally prepared for the fact that the Japanese side will ask lots of questions and need lots of detail and will be expecting a quick response from you, if you're prepared for that, then obviously things will go quicker and smoother, because you're not only providing the information quicker, but you're also you're also building the relationship and showing them the quality of your company.
Yes.
And that's the other big thing. Going back to your earlier point about building confidence and building trust. If you respond quickly, if you respond timely, if you provide the information they want, then you are not only getting the information to them, but you're sort of making an impression about your company in the way you respond, and that will build the trust with them, won't it? So
Yeah,
I think
that's
these are
really true. Yes.
these are really key points we're bringing out. But there's no doubt, there is a need to be patient, and I know
Well, yeah, that's true. But I think, yeah, people often say be patient. And then my client, UK client, also keep saying to me, I need to be patient.
okay,
But
okay, yeah,
if you just wait, things will not happen.
of
So
course,
you
right,
have
yeah,
to react to something. As you said, if the Japanese customer prospect will ask you something, please try to answer, and then try don't try to be perfect. You can continue to talk to them, and then if you feel 50% confidence, but try to do, and then if they are not happy, they will ask you again. So the keeping communication and building communication is really key, and then they will trust you, and then you can trust them, so the communication will be more smooth, I think.
That's such a great point, actually. That's another really valuable golden nugget you've made there. So when the Japanese side start asking questions like this, rather than holding off until you get the perfect answer, what you're saying is it's better just to start answering, even though you may not think it's the perfect answer, but you're getting communication going, you're building trust, you're building the relationship. If you answer and they need more information, they'll come straight back and ask for more
Yes.
information. Yeah, I've got it.
Yes.
That's a
The
really good tip.
question, I think the one point I want to mention, if the Japanese customer asks some question to foreigners, I think the Japanese are interested.
Right. Yeah.
That's the reason why they want to ask you details, I
Right.
think.
Yes.
If they
Yeah.
are not so interested or they just ignore, so
Right.
it's same. I think it's not only the Japanese, but if the people are interested, they will ask you lots of questions.
Yes.
So
Got it.
yeah, please
Yeah.
correspond.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of a very positive signal in
Yes,
terms of a
I
kind of
think
buying
so.
signal that the interest is there. So yeah, that's another great point. That's the
Mm,
way it should be viewed and looked at.
mm,
Yeah. You don't really view it as a headache.
mm.
You view it
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a
yeah.
as a,
It
as a
is headache.
positive thing, right?
Yeah, it is headache because I'm kind of the bridge person between UK and the Japanese company, and
Mm,
then the Japanese company send. If I'm here, Japanese company send some inquiry in Japanese, so I
mhm.
have to sometimes translate to English, and then I'm kind of stuck sometimes. So
Right.
I can, but this is great point for UK company. I think UK client to have my like me, because I know people, both people culture and something, so UK and Japanese culture, so I can maybe find out the suitable way
I
both of
understand.
people. I think.
Yeah, yeah, I got it. I mean, I wanted to ask you a little sub question on a point you raised there, because when you gave that example of, if we take one of the companies, the UK company that you're representing and working for now, um, and you're reaching out to potential Japanese customers for that technology, and you're introducing that technology, and you're finding the right decision maker, all the things you described earlier. Do you think the Japanese companies are more likely to kind of engage with you because you are Japanese and you can obviously speak the language in a native way and read and write, and you're in the same time zone and things? Do you think that is a benefit for the foreign companies to have somebody like you on the ground doing that work in terms of opening the door and building the relationship with the Japanese company?
Yes, I think so. That's why I'm here.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, people, yeah, because I can talk more about the language, but the Japanese, most of Japanese doesn't speak English,
Hmm.
so the we can get many information in Japanese a lot. So people tend not to use English. I mean, foreign language. We don't need to use it actually. So if the people who are not so familiar to English and then receive English email, even that's a really nice email, they might not get it. So if so, in
Mm-hmm.
that case, maybe if I'm here and then I can act for the UK company, yeah, the Japanese people might listen. So,
Yes. Yeah.
and then I can say like a very politely or something, so
Yeah.
people may understand what I want to do. So.
Yeah. And actually, that point that leads me to the sort of next question I wanted to come on to, because you sort of mentioned there that you would respond very politely. And I think what you're getting at there and what you're suggesting is that you obviously have a very good understanding of the Japanese business culture because you're native Japanese and that's where you've worked and you've been in that, you've had your career working in that way. So the sort of unique differences between the Western business culture and the unique points of the Japanese business culture, you obviously understand both really well. And that level of kind of politeness and response times and things like that, you know all about that. And that's clearly a value that you're bringing. But that leads me on to my next point I wanted to talk about was we have this expression over here that the customer is king, right? And I know that certainly applies in Japan. And sometimes when I've read some textbooks or I've heard some presentations from people, they even go as far as saying in Japan the customer is God rather than a king, i.e., suggesting the customer is one level higher than a king. So I'd like to pick your brains on that and get your thoughts on that. What's your view about that kind of expression and that way of thinking? Do you feel the customer is king or God on the Japan side?
Yeah, there's the very famous song in Japanese. Actually, it said the customer is God, but and then people think customer is God, but recently, yeah, situation is changing, so people try not to think that like that, and then but we still respect the person. So in that case, maybe we think the people is the customer. We do respect. So that's the reason I think we may think customer is God.
Okay. And does that sort of translate to the way you build those relationships? You know, we've spoken about the different ideas of building relationships and how you go about that. Is it a view that in the early days, when you're reaching out to potential new customers, you do have to treat them in that way with that utmost respect? And I guess the service that you give around that is reflecting that, you know, the response times and that responding to their requests for information and things. Is that very much part of that process?
Yeah, that's right. And then maybe the Japanese customer service level is maybe very high compared with another country. So those things maybe the foreign company thinks it's too demanding. But the reason why we think the quick response or the polite services are normal to us. So it is kind of our maybe Japanese think so. So it is normal things to do. So maybe that gap you may have some.
Yeah.
So you don't have to follow the culture, but maybe it might be good to learn how we think, and then
Yes.
yeah, that how maybe.
Yeah. And actually, I think a really good example of this that I always think about myself when I've been over to Japan on business trips and coming over as part of business delegations or with international business people, I always think even at the point where you land at the airport, when you arrive, and you immediately can see the level of customer service, and it even starts in the airport. You know, there's when the baggage is coming down the carousel, there's usually an individual, a man or a woman, standing at the baggage carousel wearing beautiful white gloves, wearing an immaculate uniform, and as the baggage comes down, they're kind of catching it and gently easing it and turning it up so all the handles are facing out as they go around the carousel to make everything easy and smooth.
It's too much, actually.
Well, it's incredible, right? And it's probably like nowhere else in the world. And then when you go out of the airport and you catch the limousine bus into the center of Tokyo, and the staff on the pavement, once they've put your bag in and they've checked your ticket, as the bus pulls away, they all bow. And as the bus disappears, if you look out of the window as you disappear in the horizon, they're still bowing to the bus and to the bus passengers. That's
That's
basically what they're doing.
right. That's
And
right.
and you know, going into restaurants and coffee shops and things, that the customer customer service level becomes so apparent so quickly. And I know us as consumers and many of us internationals that come into Japan, we love that. It's kind of, it's mind boggling when you start seeing this incredible level of customer service. And it is wonderful. But the point you're making that I think is such a good point is what we have to think about as international business people is that level of customer service in Japan is kind of the norm, right? It's what Japanese people are used to. And it's the way it is in Japan. That's the way the customer service level is. So what we have to learn from that and think about as business people is we have to remember that that's how high customer service levels are. So we have to try and match that. And if possible, try and even kind of exceed that, because we are the foreign companies trying to do business. And as we build the relationships and as we build trust with Japanese companies, we have to show them that we understand what the level of customer service expectation is and that we're capable of delivering it. You know, that's the key message. So your point about putting some time and effort into learning that and understanding that, I think, is one really well made.
I think if you can tell and then if you can show what you are thinking and then what you want to do, that's enough for at the beginning, I think. Right. And then you can make some if you could understand more about the situation or what we are doing, and then you can learn it. You can't be perfect at the beginning, but if you can show what you want to do and then what you want to become, so that's great. I think good to show.
I think it's really good to understand that. And of course, in reality, what we have to think about with that is it's not just, we're giving examples from a consumer point of view when we talk about the airport or the coffee shop and things, but it obviously does apply across to the business world, to the B2B world. And the way I like to always think about it is for a foreign company trying to go into the Japanese market and do business there, we know it's kind of a risk-adverse culture. So the Japanese companies that could be your customer will, as we've discussed, they will take time and think carefully, and they won't want to take a risk of something that could go wrong. So part of their evaluation process is thinking, what is the customer service level like and what is the response level like? And they, of course, will be thinking, if we start using your technology, your service or your product, and if something happens to go wrong, I want to know how you're going to react. What kind of service are you going to give me? You know, how do you respond? How do you engage with us? How do you help us? They'll be thinking through all of that. And so giving them all the right signals that you're tuned into understanding what the customer service level and the response time should be like are all part of that package of winning the business, aren't they? So it's a really, really good topic.
Yeah, also that's my position, to do. So if I'm here, I could hear what the Japanese customer thinking. And then I can understand. And then they, as I said, they are quite demanding. So I don't want to pass everything to UK company, because the Japanese company is so demanding and they want to be perfect. But it is sometimes I feel too much. So sometimes I actually ignore some requests. I will pick up some very important things. I want UK client to focus, like if Japanese have 5 questions or 5 inquiries, 5 something, I just maybe pick up 2 or 3 so that's the UK client also feel a little bit free. That kind of things I can do for UK client. Also,
so you're saying that you're almost being a little bit of a filter. So you're kind of picking out what are the priority questions, and some of them you might be able to handle locally, excuse me, but others you will pass on to the UK client that where you need them to answer and come up with it. I got it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, very good. All right, that's very useful. Okay, I wanted to sort of move on to a different area now. So many of the companies that might be listening to this this podcast might be thinking about Japan for the first time. It might be a new market to them, but they may have already had some success in other international markets. You know, sometimes they might approach the US market, for example, which is much closer to the UK because it's the same language and closer time zone and geography and closer business culture. So what I wanted to ask you is when companies have had success in other geographic markets, How relevant is that, and how could that apply to coming out to Japan? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course, it depends on the kind of successful experience, but I want you to understand maybe the other country's successful story will not directly match, I
Hmm.
think, will
Mm-hmm.
not fit. So the most important thing is how you can arrange to fit to the Japanese market, and then how you needed to think about it. So it can't be directly apply to Japan
Mm-hmm.
market. So
Yeah. Okay. So
so,
it
but still, Japanese company want to know the past record. So
mm,
if you have some experience for another country, it will help. But the most Japanese want to know what kind of result you have in Japan. So
right.
it's really difficult to find out. But
Yeah, I understand. So,
mm,
so what you're saying is, if a foreign technology company have had success in other markets, that's a very strong message they can bring as part of their presentation and their pitch. That adds value, but they shouldn't automatically just think that however they achieve that success in a foreign country will automatically apply to Japan. They've got to think it through and develop a
yeah.
strategy and a process and a way of presenting and developing a business that is bespoke to the Japanese market. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I've got it.
yeah, as you said, maybe the process is a little bit different. So if you have any other successful in another country, you can't use the same process, I think.
I understand. Okay. And then there was an interesting little sub point that you made there that I want to pick up on. So I think what you were saying is, if a foreign company have already had some success in Japan, if they've already got a first client or a first case usage study of their technology, then that's a very strong point, because the Japanese companies will definitely be interested in hearing of another Japanese company that's already using the technology, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so Japanese really rely on the reliability of the
Hmm.
product. So that's why, so if another Japanese company adapt that technology or product, they automatically think the product has a good reliability or strength point or something, a good advantage or something. So
Yeah.
it is quicker.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So it might mean that sometimes winning that first piece of business in Japan is often the toughest thing to do. And a company should work really hard to get it, because once they've got the first piece of business, then in theory, if that goes smoothly and goes well, then other Japanese companies may follow once they can see that it has been
Yes, yes,
adopted
yes.
in one. Yeah, I've got it. I've got it. Yeah, really interesting. Thank you. Um, if we talk about the business meeting style in Japan, because again, I want to just understand if that is very different to what foreign companies may be used to, and how that may work. So again, could you give us any comment or experience on the business meeting style in Japan, how that typically is?
Yeah, I'm love to. So maybe before I talk about the current situation, I just want to mention one interesting survey report in 2019. So the company, the questionee was the company who want to have a business person to come to their office for the business meeting. They answered the reason. Most people said, I could feel secure if I can see the salesperson face.
Hmm,
So this kind of thing. So the
very interesting.
people want to see the people by face.
Mm,
The people think the face-to-face meeting is really important.
mm,
But as you're aware, our world has been changed since 2020. So our business style also has been changed. So
mm,
recently, we can't do the face-to-face meeting like a web meeting. If we
mm,
say face-to-face meeting, this is the face-to-face meeting. But the meeting the meeting style has been changed really
mm.
quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you feel about that? Are you seeing Japanese companies embracing these new kind of technologies of doing the web-based meetings more and more now? Is it a trend you're
I think
seeing
they
that's
had
coming up?
to, so they have to use
Right.
to.
Yeah. And I guess the huge question will be what happens when the pandemic is over? And do we go back to the old way, or does this new trend come in? And I guess that's a bit of a crystal ball. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, right. But I think lots of company are aware it works, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then I think the lots of company is saving the money,
Mm-hmm.
like expense. So I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
the you may be aware lots of big company is now doing the to stop. I mean, they are closing their office.
Mm-hmm.
So they are very curious to know how they can do, but I think they want to save their money. So
Got it. Yeah.
the expense is the key, I think.
Yeah. So this could be a new trend and it
Mm.
may maintain even after the pandemic is over. So
Mhm.
I guess time will tell us that. That would be really interesting. Okay, I'm aware of the time, but there's a couple more questions I would like to just put to you on other areas I'd like to pick up on before we wrap up.
Yes.
First of all, you've sort of mentioned in your introduction that you've worked with various international technology companies, and in some cases, you're working with companies that are completely new to the market, and you've had to sort of start from a zero base. So yeah, for new companies that are coming to the market for the first time, and I know you've had some experience of working with international technology companies that are completely new to the market, and you've had to work from a zero base and build up the prospects and the customers. How do you generally go about trying to find those prospects and reach out to those customers on the Japan side? What's your process or your techniques for doing that?
Okay. So for my side, I think I normally use the internet research or like a trade show.
Hmm.
It's
Mhm.
a physical trade show. It has happened used to, but
Mhm.
recently the physical trade show has been like postponed or cancelled. So lots of web-based webinars are very popular now in Japan too. So I have to, if I want to try to find a prospect, I also uh, use the webinars or trade show, web-based trade show or something. And so those, if I could not find those information, I needed to use more internet research because
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't go many places. The one thing I think one thing I want to tell you about the opposite side, the customer, people who are looking for new technology, is also using the internet. So
Mm.
because they used to get the latest information from the local agent or some manufacturers because they used to visit the customer face-to-face meeting.
Mm.
So recently it is not possible to do. So the customer is also finding the difficulty to find the latest information. So they have to use the internet research. So I think the digital marketing may not be the 100% sure way to go, but I think at this situation, I think digital marketing for everyone is very important, I think.
Mm. Okay. So it's using digital marketing techniques to get lead generation programs, basically, to get companies finding your information online and then sending their inquiries in and picking up and following those up. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's a
One thing I want to
fascinating trend.
mention is the Japanese use Japanese language.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so SEO is really important. I mean, the localization or translation is
Mhm.
really important, I think.
Got it. Yeah, of course. So it needs to be in Japanese, needs to be localized with that local know-how and understanding. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. But it makes sense. I see totally what you're saying with this, with the theme that's come out on this discussion about how the business meeting trend has changed and you can no longer go and have the face-to-face meetings. So it means on the other side, the customer is not getting the information. So they're therefore going online to find the information. So if there's good SEO capabilities and good digital information out there, by the foreign companies selling their technology, then it will get picked up quicker. Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. That's another great little golden nugget to be aware of there. Okay. And as we move into my last question, I really want to explore a little bit more with you about how foreign companies can go about entering the Japanese market in the lowest possible risk, so they can manage their risk, manage their budget, but then sort of scale up. And that's another huge question that I get asked a lot, because when foreign companies think about having to open their own office in Japan at an early stage and incorporate a company and maybe hire somebody on the ground to work for them, that sounds quite often like a very scary thing to do and a very heavy process orientated thing with a lot of work involved in doing that, and potentially quite a big risk, expensive and a big risk as well, because if it doesn't happen to go right, if you get something wrong, or if the market doesn't unfold the way you hoped it would, it's a very difficult thing to unpick that. So in terms of sort of low cost and low risk ways of coming into the market and building up, what are your thoughts and advice from your experience on doing that, Wakako?
Yeah, I think it is very important to take a step by step. So I think at the start point, you can't you can't find out the full-time staff, I think, because the Japanese are not used to work for a freelance. Like yes, there are some freelance people, but the like a tech market or industry sector, people tended to work as an employee, Japanese employee. So the startup company, if they don't have the legal entity, even they have the legal entity, many people does not want to take a risk. So it is really hard to find the people anyway. So I think to reduce the risk, I think like a business link Japan, I think we can like this, like us, maybe it is very easy for foreign company to use this kind of solution, because we could give some like a part-time activity, or we could do some research or some business development or any services the UK client wants to do. So if you try to what
I guess what you're trying to say is if you try to do it by yourself from the outset, it can be a big risk and a big expense, right? But the way you do it, for example, we spoke about this particular client you're working with right now. You could start working with them almost on a part-time basis. But on the Japan side, the customers that you're talking to, obviously they don't necessarily know that. So what they see is that UK company has got a presence in Japan. It's got a Japanese representative who is there in the same time zone and can take the phone calls and can speak the language and knows the customer service levels, all the things that we were discussing that are important. But you're actually, from a budget point of view and a risk point of view, that's kept managed quite low for the UK company, perhaps until a point where they get more confidence. Maybe when you win the first order or get the first revenue, then that's when the confidence can start to come and you can start to plan to scale up and build up. So I think that sounds like a really good way forward from my perspective.
Yes, that's right. So as mentioned, the legal entity is kind of powerful word. I think the Japanese things, if you have the legal entity, we say KK, maybe the Japanese people might get more confidence about your company. But it is quite risky. I think the Majima-san already mentioned. So
yes, we have that on a separate podcast. All right. Yeah.
So as a step, it's very important, I think.
Yeah.
So once you, as you said, once you have enough confidence about Japan market, it is quite a good idea to establish a KK, but at the beginning, it's quite risky to do. So using our resources is really low risk and then high value, I think.
Yeah, okay. And just so we can really clarify, because I think these are important points we're bringing out again to help the international tech companies really think about their market entry strategy. So what you're saying is that you could work, you and your colleagues in the Business Link Japan operation can work initially on a part-time basis for companies while the market is being developed and built up and research and customer feedback is being given. And then it can just scale up, as things get busier. And how about other points like having, a local registered office in Japan for the foreign company and a dedicated phone line and things like that? Is that all part of that service as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have variety of services. So yeah, we just have the small desk, or we just have an address, or just phone number, or yeah, it is good to have address, I think. So we have many services.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess it comes back to this point we touched on of developing the trust in the Japanese customer and all the things around the customer relationship levels and all those sort of things. And it's all about doing all we can to build that kind of trust for the Japanese company to think that the foreign company is a safe bet to do business with. And I guess having a local office address in Japan, having a local phone number that they can call up at any time and they know a Japanese person will answer it, and a capable Japanese person that understands the UK company's technology and their offering and the service levels that are required. They're all valuable points in building the relationship, building the trust, and therefore going on to win the business. So it makes good sense. Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of covered all the points I wanted to, and we're kind of coming to the end of the podcast. But I think that's been a really good discussion, and I really appreciate you spending time with us to explain your 10 years of wisdom. And there's so many good little golden nuggets we've pulled out there. And for those companies, back here listening into this podcast, I hope that's been very useful. I hope there's some good points you've picked out from this discussion with Wakako. And of course, if you want any further help on this and you want to take any of this forward, you can reach out to Wakako. You can find her and contact Wakako directly, or contact us through Export to Japan, and we can either put you in touch with Wakako or answer any questions you may have. So I hope it's been valuable for you. But just as my last thought, Wakako, I'd like to thank you for your time today. It's been a great discussion, and really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience with us.
Me too. Yeah, if you have any questions or need any help, we are really willing to support.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Thank you for your time, Wakako.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye-bye.